The Business Research Process, an Overview, Chapter 4, Business Research Methods. After studying this chapter, we should be able to define decision making and understand the role research plays in making decisions, classify business research as either exploratory research, descriptive research, or causal research, list the major phases of the research process and the steps within each, and explain the difference between a research project and a research program. So the opening example is getting and keeping up to speed, how Hoover's helps HP. So like most global companies, Hewlett-Packard, HP must continue to innovate, develop new technology-based products and services, and engage end users, other businesses, and even governmental institutions across the globe. It must do this in a continuous changing environment, with time pressures and other competitors seeking to exploit technology advances that they bring to the same customers. Finally, HP is hiring new sales staff and changing the market territories on a continuous basis. Business opportunities in information technology are hard-fought and hard-won. How can HP help their sales staff with data and analysis to keep them up to speed with new companies, new territories, and new technologies? So the solution to HP data and analysis support problems was found with Hoover's. It's a division of the Dun & Bradstreet Corporation. Hoover's provide detailed company information including industry data and news, and HP sales stuff in a real-time format. Hoover's assist with account planning and engagement, executive information, up-to-the-minute industry information that HP sales reps can use to quickly and efficiently engage existing and new customers around the globe. Hoover's is an integral part of HP customers' relationship management, CRM strategies, with data plugin and capabilities that give the sales rep real-time information to assist them in their decision. Through the use of Hoover data and analysis tools, HP sales staff can now help manage their sales contacts in the intensely complicated and time-intensive information technology environment. So for sure, Hoover's helps HP get and obviously to keep up to the speed. So in this chapter, we're gonna focus on the relationship between business research and managerial decision making. Business success is determined directly by the quality of decision made by key personnel. Researchers contribute to decision making in several key ways, and this include helping to better define the current situation, defining the firm, determining how consumers, competitors, and employees view the firm, providing ideas for enhancing current business practices, identifying new strategy direction, testing ideas that will assist in implementing business strategy for the firm, examining how correct a certain business theory is in a given situation. So we'll introduce the type of research that allow researchers to provide input to the key decision makers, and causality and the conditions for establishing causality are present. Last but not least, we'll see the stages in the business research process. Businesses such as HP face decisions that shape the future of the organization, its employees, and its customers. In each case, the decisions are brought about as the firm either seeks to capitalize on some opportunities or to reduce any potential negative impact related to some business problems. A business opportunity is a situation that makes some potential competitive advantage possible. The discovery of some underserved segments presents such as an opportunity. A business problem is a situation that makes some significant negative consequence more likely. A natural disaster can present a problem for many firms as they face potential loss of property or personnel and the possibility that their operation and therefore their revenue will be interrupted. Most business problems, however, are not nearly as obvious, and many are not easily observable. Instead, problems are commonly inferred from symptoms, which are observable cues that serve as a signal of a problem because they are caused by that problem. An increase in employee turnover is generally only a symptom of a business problem rather than the problem itself, and research may help identify what is causing the symptoms so that the decision maker can actually attack the problem, not just the symptom. So similar with patients, don't usually go to a doctor and point out their problem. They point out the symptoms they are experiencing. So similarly, decision makers usually hear about symptoms and often need help from researchers to identify and attack the problem. Whether facing an opportunity or a problem, businesses need quality information to deal effectively with the situation. So formally defined decision making is the process of developing and deciding among alternative ways of resolving a problem or choosing from among alternative opportunities. A decision maker must recognize the nature of the problem or opportunity, identify how much information is currently available and how reliable it is, and determine what additional information is needed to better deal with the situation. Every decision-making situation can be classified based on whether it best represents a problem or an opportunity and where the situation falls on a continuum from absolute ambiguity to complete certainty. Certainty. Complete certainty means that the decision maker has all information needed to make an optimal decision. It includes the exact nature of the business problem or opportunity. For example, an advertising agency may need to know the demographic characteristic of subscriber to a magazine in which it may place a client advertisement. The agency knows exactly what information it needs and where to find the information. If a manager is completely certain about the problem or opportunity and future outcomes, then research may not be needed at all. However, perfect certainty, especially about the future, is very rare. Uncertainty means that manager grasps the general nature of desired objective, but the information about alternative is incomplete. Predictions about forces that shape future events are educated guesses. Under conditions of uncertainty, effective managers recognize that spending additional time to gather data that clarify the nature of a decision is needed. For example, a company needs operating capital, may consider an initial public offering, but it's not certain of demand for the stock or how to establish the price of the IPO. So business decisions generally involve uncertainty, particularly when a company is seeking new opportunities. And ambiguity means that the nature of the problem itself is unclear. Objectives are vague and decision alternatives are difficult to define. And this is by far the most difficult decision situation, but perhaps the most common. And managers face a variety of problems and decisions. Complete certainty and predictable future outcomes may make business research a waste of time. However, under condition of uncertainty or ambiguity, business research becomes more attractive to the decision makers. Decisions also vary in terms of importance, meaning that some may have great impact on the welfare of the company and other may have negligible impact. The more important, ambiguous or uncertain a situation is, the more likely it is that additional time must be spent on business research. This exhibit depicts the decision situation characterized by the nature of the decision and the degree of ambiguity. Under problem-focused decision-making and conditions of high ambiguity, symptoms may not clearly point to some problem. Indeed, they may be quite vague or subtle, indicating only small deviation from normal condition. For instance, a fast food restaurant may be experiencing small changes in the sales of its individual products, but no change in overall sales. So such a symptom may not easily point to a problem, such as a change in consumer tastes. An ambiguity is lessened, the symptoms are clearer and the better indicators of a problem. A large and sudden drop in overall sales may suggest the problem that the restaurant menu does not fare well compared to competitors' menu. A menu change may be in order. However, it's also possible the drop in sales is due to a new competition, or a competitor's price drop, or a new promotional campaign. So research is needed to clarify the situation. Similarly, in opportunity-oriented research, ambiguity is characterized by environmental trends that do not suggest a clear direction, and as the trend becomes larger and clearer, they are more diagnostics, meaning they point more clearly to a single opportunity. Types of business research. Business research is undertaken to reduce uncertainty and to focus decision-making. In more ambiguous circumstances, management may be totally unaware of a business problem. Alternatively, someone may be scanning the environment for opportunities. An entrepreneur may have a personal interest in softball or baseball, so interested in converting her hobby into a profitable business venture, and hit on the idea of establishing an indoor softball or baseball training facility and an instructional center. However, the demand for such a business is unknown, and even if there is sufficient demand, it's not sure of the best location, so actual services offered or desired hours of operation and so forth. So some preliminary research is necessary to gain insight into the nature of such a situation. Without it, the situation may remain too ambiguous to make more than a seat of the pants decision. So in this situation, business research is almost certainly needed. In other situations, researchers know exactly what their problems are and can design careful studies to test specific hypotheses. An organization may face a problem regarding healthcare benefit for their employees, and awareness of this problem could be based on input from human resource managers, recruiters, and the current employees. The problem could be contributing to difficulties in recruiting new employees. How should the organization executive team address this problem? They may devise a careful test exploring which of 3 different health plans are judged the most desirable. This type of research is the problem-oriented and seems relatively unambiguous. This process may culminate with researchers preparing a report suggesting the relative effect of each alternative plan on employee recruitment. The selection of a new health plan should follow relatively directly from the research. Business research can be classified on the basis of either techniques or purpose. Experiments, surveys, observational studies are just a few common research techniques. Classifying research by its purpose, such as the situations described, shows how the nature of a decision situation influenced the research methodology. The following section introduces the 3 types of business research: exploratory, descriptive, and causal. And matching the particular decision situation with the right type of research is important in obtaining useful research results. Exploratory research is conducted to clarify ambiguous situations or discover potential business opportunities. As the name implies, exploratory research is not intended to provide conclusive evidence from which to determine a particular course of action. Exploratory research is not an end unto itself. Usually, exploratory research is the first step, conducted with the expectation that additional research will be needed to provide more conclusive evidence. Exploratory research is often used to guide and refine the subsequent research efforts. Exploratory research is particularly useful in new product development. Sony and Honda have each been instrumental in developing robot technology, and making a functional robot that can only move around, perform basic functions, carry out instruction, and even carry on a conversation isn't really a problem. What Honda have to research is what business opportunities may exist based on robot technology. Exploratory research allowing consumers to interact with these robots suggests that consumers are more engaged when the robot has human qualities, ability to walk on two legs maybe. And researchers notice that people will actually talk to the robot, which can understand basic oral command, more when it has a human qualities. In addition, consumers do seem entertained by walking, talking, or dancing robots. And these initial insights have allowed each company to form more specific research questions focusing on the relative value of a robot as an entertainment device or as a security guard, and identifying characteristics that may be important to consumers. Cute, funny, or sexy, what makes a mascot tick? What should the M&M's character be named? Mr. Peanut, the icon for Planters Peanuts, has actually changed very little since his introduction in the 20s. He looks good for his age, so exploratory research suggests generally positive comments about Mr. Peanut, so only minor changes in the color scheme have been introduced. A few years ago, exploratory research led to some further tests of a Mr. Peanut in Bermuda short, but tests proved overwhelmingly negative, so sending planters back to the more original Peanut. Similarly, exploratory research asked a few consumers for their reaction to the Mars M&M characters. Mars was interested in discovering names for the characters. They found that the most consumers simply refers them by the colors. So this piece of information become useful in shaping future research and business strategy. Descriptive research. As the name implies, the major purpose of descriptive research is to describe characteristics of objects, people, groups, organizations, or environments. In other words, descriptive research tries to paint a picture of a given situation by addressing who, what, when, where, and how questions. Unlike exploratory research, descriptive studies are conducted after the researcher has gained a grasp of the situation being studied. This understanding, which may have been developed in part from exploratory research, directs the study towards specific issues. We'll discuss the role of research questions and hypotheses. The statement helps greatly in designing and implementing a descriptive study. Without this, the researcher would have little or no idea of what questions to ask. Descriptive research often helps describe market segments. For example, researchers use descriptive survey to describe consumers who are heavy consumers, buy a lot of organic food products, and resulting reports shows that these consumers tend to live in coastal cities with population over 500,000, or majority residing on the west coast or east coast. Research such as this help high quality supermarkets like Whole Foods make location decision. Over half of Whole Foods food products are organic. Similarly, universities considering the addition of an online MBA program might benefit from descriptive research profiling current and potential customers. Online customers are not identical to the traditional MBA students. A diagnostic analysis seeks to diagnose reasons for business outcomes and focuses specifically on beliefs and feelings respondents have about and towards specific issues. A research study trying to diagnose the French wine sales might ask consumers their belief about the taste of French, Australian, and American wines. The results may indicate a deficiency in taste, suggesting that consumers do not believe French wine tastes as fruity as do the others. Descriptive research can sometimes provide an explanation by diagnosing differences among competitors, but descriptive research does not provide direct evidence or causality. This is another example taking a swing at business success. So Greg Norman is a pro golfer, but is as well known as a successful winemaker. So descriptive research details what wine consumers like to drink in terms of where the wine is from and where the consumers are located. Consumers around the world from geographic segments with preferences for wine from certain areas. American consumers have contributed to the growing slump in French wine sales by switching increasingly from French wines to Australian and American-made wines. So all the descriptive results may allow Greg Norman a better understanding of the international wine markets, and therefore allow him to make better decisions about where to grow and to produce wine. If it's a good choice to expand to California rather than France, this seems a good decision for him. Causal research. If a decision maker knows what causes important outcomes like sales, stock prices, and employee satisfaction, then he or she can shape firm's decision in a positive way. Causal research seeks to identify cause and effect relationship. When something causes an effect, it means it brings it about or makes it happen. The effect is the outcome. Rain causes grass to get wet, but rain is the cause and wet grass is the effect. So the different types of research discussed here are often building blocks. Exploratory research builds the foundation for descriptive research, which usually establishes the basis for causal research. Though before causal studies are undertaken, researchers typically have a good understanding of a phenomenon being studied. Because of this, researchers can make an educated prediction about the cause and effect relationship that will be tested. Although greater knowledge of the situation is a good thing, it doesn't come without a price. Casual research design can take a long time to implement. They often involve intricate design that can be very expensive. Even though managers may often want the assurance that causal inference can bring, they are not always willing to spend the time and the money it takes to get them. Ideally, managers want to know how a change in one event will change another event of interest. How will implementing a new employee training program change job performance? Causal research attempts to establish that when we do one thing and another thing will follow. A causal inference is just such a conclusion. While we use the term cause frequently in our everyday language, scientifically establishing something as a cause is not so easy. A causal inference can only be supported when very specific evidence exists. And three critical pieces of causal evidence are temporal sequence, concomitant variance, and non-spurious association. Temporal sequence deals with the time order of events. Having an appropriate causal order of events or temporal sequence is one criteria for causality. Simply put, the cause must occur before the event. Concomitant variation occurs when two events co-vary or correlate, meaning they vary systematically. In causal terms, concomitant variations means that when a change in the cause occurs, a change in the outcome as well will occur. Causality cannot possibly exist when there is no systematic variation between the variables. And non-spurious association means any covariation between a cause and an effect is true rather than due to some other variable. A spurious association is one that is not true. Often a causal inference cannot be made even though the other two conditions exist because both the cause and the effect have some common cause, that it both may be influenced by a third variable. For instance, there is a strong positive correlation between ice cream purchases and murder rates. As ice cream purchases increase, so do murder rates. When ice cream sales decline, murder rates as well drops. Do people become murderers after eating ice cream? Should we outlaw the sales of ice cream? This would be silly because the concomitant variation observed between ice cream consumption and murder rate is spurious. A third variable is actually important here. People purchase more ice cream when the weather is hot, and people are also more active and likely to commit a violent crime when it is hot. So the weather being associated with both may actually cause both of them. So in this one here in this exhibit, we can see the concept of spurious association. and establishing evidence of non-spuriousness can be difficult. Degrees of causality. In everyday language, we often use the word cause in an absolute sense. For example, a warning label used on cigarette packages claims smoking causes cancer. Is this true in an absolute sense? Absolute causality means that the cause is necessary and sufficient to bring about the effect. So if we find only one smoker who does not eventually get cancer, the claim is false. So although this is a very strong inference, it is impractical to think that we can establish absolute causality in the behavioral science. So why do we continue to do causal research then? Although managers may like to be able to draw absolute conclusion, they can often make a very good decision based on less powerful inferences. Conditional causality means that a cause is necessary but not sufficient to bring about an effect. This is a weaker causal inference. One way to think about conditional causality is that the cause can bring about the effect, but it cannot do so alone. If other conditions are right, the cause can bring about the effect. We know there are other medical factors that contribute to cancer. For instance, genetic, lifestyles, and diet are as well plausible causes of cancer. So if one smokes and has a genetic disposition, diet, and lifestyle that promote cancer, smoking could be considered a conditional cause of cancer. So, however, if we can find someone who has contracted cancer and never smoked, that causal inference would be proven wrong. Contributory causality is the weakest form of causality, but it is still a useful concept. A cause needs to be neither necessary nor sufficient to bring about an effect. However, causal evidence can be established using the three factors that we've discussed. So for any outcome, there may be multiple causes. So an event can be contributory cause of something so long as the introduction of the other possible causes does not eliminate the correlation between it and the effect. This smoking then can be a contributory cause of cancer so long as the introduction of other possible causes does not cause both smoking and cancer. Experiments. Business experiments hold the greatest potential for establishing cause and effect relationship. An experiment is a carefully controlled study in which the researcher manipulates a proposed cause and observe any corresponding change in the proposed effect. An experimental variable represents the proposed cause and is controlled by the researcher by manipulating it. Manipulation means that the researcher alters the level of the variable in specific increments. And a test market is an experiment that is conducted within actual business conditions. Stages in the research process. Business research, like other forms of scientific inquiry, involves a sequence of highly interrelated activities, and the stages of the research process overlap continuously, and it is clearly an oversimplification to state that every research project has exactly the same order sequence of activities. Nevertheless, business research often follow a general pattern, and this here we have the following research business stages: defining the research objectives, planning a research design, planning a sample, collecting the data, analyzing the data, and formulating the conclusion and preparing the report. In practice, the stages overlap somewhat from a timing perspective. Later stages sometimes can be completed before earlier ones, and the terms forward linkage and backward linkage reflect the interrelationship between stages. Forward linkage implies that the earlier stages influence the later stages. So the research objectives outlined in the first stage affect the sample selection and the way data are collected. The sample selection question affect the wording of the questionnaire items. And backward linkage implies that later steps influence early stages of the research process. If it is known that the data will be collected through email, then the sampling must include those with email access. And a very important example of backward linkage is the knowledge that the executive who will read the report are looking for specific information. The professional researcher anticipates executives' need for information through the planning process, particularly during the analysis and the reporting. Stages of the research process: defining the research objectives, then we have the research design, sampling, data collection, data analysis, and in the end the conclusion and the reporting. The flowchart of the business research process: define the objectives, the selection, and then data, problem definition, selection of the research methods, and then sampling again, data gathering, data processing, and in the end drawing the conclusion and preparing the report. Defining the research objectives. The research process begins with the research objectives and are the goals to be achieved by conducting the research. In consulting, the term deliverable is often used to describe the objective to a research client, and the genesis of the research objectives lies in the type of decision situation faced. The objectives may involve exploring the possibilities of entering a new market. Alternatively, they may involve testing the effect of some policy change on job satisfaction. Different types of objective led to different types of research design. In applied business research, the objectives cannot really be determined until there's a clear understanding of the managerial decision to be made, and this understanding must be shared between the actual decision maker and the lead researcher. We often describe this understanding as a problem statement. The word problem suggests that something has gone wrong, but this isn't always the case before research gets started. So the research objective may be simply clarify a situation, define an opportunity, or monitor and evaluate current business operations. So the research objectives cannot be developed until managers and researchers have agreed on the actual business problem that will address the researcher. So they set out to discover this problem through a series of interviews and through a document that is called the research proposal. Exploratory research. Exploratory research can be used to help identify and clarify the decisions that need to be made, and these preliminary research activities can narrow the scope of the research topics and help transform ambiguous problems into well-defined ones that yield specific research objectives. By investigating any existing studies on the subject, talking with knowledgeable individuals, and informally investigating the situation, the researcher can progressively sharpen the focus of the research. After such exploration, the researcher should know exactly which data to collect during the formal phases of the project and how to conduct the project. Previous research. As a general rule, researchers should first investigate previous research to see whether or not others may have already addressed this type of problems. And internal research reports should be searched within the company archives. Literature review is directed search of published work, including periodicals and books that discuss theory and present empirical results that are relevant to the topic on hand. While literature survey is a common and applied research studies, it is a fundamental requirement of a basic research report. Pilot studies. Almost all consumers take a test drive before buying a car. So a pilot study serves a similar purpose for the researcher. A pilot study is a small-scale research project that collects data from respondents similar to those that will be used in the full study. It can serve as a guide for a larger study or examining specific aspects of the research to see if the selected procedures will actually work as intended. A pretest is a very descriptive term indicating a small-scale study in which the results are preliminary and intended only to assist in design of a subsequent study. A focus group interviews are sometimes used as a pilot study. A focus group interview brings together 6 to 12 people in a loosely structured format, and the technique is based on the assumption that individuals are more willing to talk about things when they are able to do so within a group discussion format. Focus group respondents sometimes feed on each other's comments to develop ideas that would be difficult to express in a different interview format. Exploratory research need not always follow a structured design, because the purpose of exploratory research is to gain insight and discover new ideas. Researcher may use considerable creativity and flexibility. Planning the research design. After identifying and clarifying the problem with or without exploratory research, the researcher must formally state the research objectives. And this statement delineates the type of research that is needed and what intelligence may result that would allow the decision maker to make informed choices. The statement of research objectives culminate the process of clarifying the managerial decision into something actionable. And then after the researcher formulated the research problem, he or she must develop this design. And the research design is a master plan that specifies the methods and procedures for collecting and analyzing the needed information. A research design provides a framework or plan of action for the research. Objectives of the study determined during the early stages of research are included in the design to ensure that the information collected is appropriate for solving the problem. The researcher as well must determine the sources of information, the design techniques, survey or experiment, and then the sampling methodology and the schedule, as well the cost of the research. In business research, the most common method of generating primary data is the survey. And probably most people have seen the results of political surveys by Gallup or Harris Online, and some have been respondents, member of a sample who supplied answer to research questionnaires. A survey is a research technique in which a sample is interviewed in some form, or the behavior of respondents is observed and described in some way. The term surveyor is most often reserved for civil engineers who describe some pieces of property using a transit. But similarly, business researchers describe some group of interest, executive, employees, customers, competitors, using a questionnaire. And the task of writing a question and designing the format of the printed or written questionnaire is an essential aspect of the development of a survey research design. The survey can be conducted over the phone, mail, internet, or as well can be in person. Rolling Rock is another example where the beer offered a number of lower priced line extensions, but they failed and they didn't conduct a massive consumer study, and the results indicated that the consumer expected and were willing to pay more than that. Sampling. Although the sampling plan is outlined in the research design, the sampling stage is a distinct phase of the research process. And sampling involves any procedure that draws conclusion based on measurements of a portion of the population. A sample is a subset from a larger population. If certain statistical procedures are followed, a researcher needs not select every item in a population, because the results of a good sample should have the same characteristic as the population as a whole. The first sampling question to ask is who is to be sampled? And the next sampling issues is about the sample size. How big should the sample be? And in the final sampling decision is how to select the sampling unit. Simple random sampling may be the best known type, in which every unit in the population has an equal and known chance of being selected. However, this is only one type of sampling. We're gonna see later on other ones. Gathering data. The data gathering stage begins once the sampling plan has been formalized. And data gathering is the process of gathering or collecting data. Data may be gathered by human observers or interviewers, or they may be recorded by machines in the case of a scanner data or web-based surveys. Unobtrusive methods of data gathering are those in which the subjects do not have to be disturbed for the data to be collected. They may be even unaware that research is going on. Processing and analyzing data. Editing and coding. After the fieldwork had been completed, the data must be converted into a format that will answer the manager's question, and this is the part of data processing and analysis stage. The information content will be mined from the raw data. Data processing generally begins with editing and coding the data. Editing involves checking the data collection forms from omission, legibility, and consistency in classification. Before data can be tabulated, meaningful categories and character symbols must be established for groups or responses. This coding process facilitates the computer or hand tabulation. If computer analysis is to be used, the data are entered into the computer and verified. Data analysis is the application of reasoning to understand the data that have been gathered. In its simple form, analysis may involve determining consistent patterns and summarizing the relevant details revealed in the investigation. And then the appropriate analytical technique for data analysis will be determined by the management information requirements, the characteristic of the research design, and the nature of the data gathered. Statistical analysis may range from portraying a simple frequency distribution to more complex multivariate analysis approaches, multiple regressions, and so on. Drawing the conclusion and preparing the report. One of the most important jobs that a researcher performs is communicating the research results, and this is the final stage of the research project, but is far from the least important. The conclusions and report preparation stages consist of interpreting the research results, describing the implication, and then drawing the conclusions for the managerial decisions. And these conclusions should fulfill the deliverables promised in the research proposal. It's important that the researcher consider the varying ability of people to understand the research result. And the report shouldn't be written the same way to a group of PhDs as it would be to a group of line managers. So the strategies, the research program strategies, our discussion of the business research process began with the assumption that the researcher wished to collect data to achieve a specific organizational objective. When the researcher has only one small number of research objectives that can be addressed in a single study, that study is referred to as a research project. And we have emphasized the researchers' need to select specific techniques for solving one-dimensional problems, such as identifying customer segments, selecting the most desirable employee insurance plan, or determining an IPO stock price. However, if you think about a company's business activity in a given period of time, you realize that the business research is not a one-shot activity. It's a continuous process. An exploratory research study may be followed by a survey, or a researcher may conduct a specific research project for each business tactical decision. If a new product is being developed, the different types of research might include studies to identify the size and characteristics of the market, product usage testing to record consumers' reaction to prototypes, and brand name and packaging research to determine the product's symbolic connotation, and test marketing the new product. When numerous related studies come together to address issues about a single company, we refer to this as a research program. Because research is a continuous process, management should view business research at a strategic planning level. The program strategy refers to a firm's overall plan to use business research. It is a planning activity that placed a series of research projects in the context of the company's strategic plan. Thank you so much.